to have such a retreat is actually involves the work of many, many people. And I really, really want to thank everyone. I really want to thank all the providers. It's many beings we have to keep in mind when we do those retreats. So, and we rejoice in the causes and conditions for all of you to be here. And we really thank you for the support, because we need the support to survive, to be able as a center to spread the Dharma through the kindness of our teachers and through your kindness. So thank you very, very, very much. Have a wonderful, wonderful retreat. If you need any help, right? And otherwise, have a wonderful time. And I hand over to Geshe. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Hello, everybody. Yeah, for me, it's my first Zoom experience, I have to say. So it's a bit new to me. So thanks to Land of Joy of hosting it, and Jamyang London helping out with the technical issues of this retreat. So yeah, it's called a retreat, but it's different than being at the Land of Joy, I suppose. I've never been there yet, but because everybody's in their own living room or back home, so it's slightly different, but try to have a kind of discipline throughout the coming days in order to make a kind of retreat kind of situation. Yeah, so I was planning to go with the 12 links as the main subject. And for that purpose, you have received a few documents. So one is a sheet with the drawing of the Wheel of Life. So that drawing of the Wheel of Life you can use together with the audio recordings of the Wheel of Life teachings we did last year in Jiangnan. So that's available for you to listen to and think about in your spare time in the coming days. So if you can do that on the side, then I don't have to explain that part. Why is that? Because I was planning to go over 2 texts by Arya Nagarjuna, and well, 2 chapters from the texts of fundamental wisdom. Yeah, so 2 chapters Holiness Dalai Lama always recommends and teaches quite often. So I was planning to explain those 2 chapters. So one is the chapter 26 on the 12 links of interdependence, and chapter 18 on emptiness. Yeah, because without emptiness, it's a bit difficult to eliminate suffering. Yeah, so to eliminate ignorance. So that's more or less the content of the coming few days. Yeah, so if you use that sheet with the Wheel of Life, with the drawings, together with the audio recordings yourself, then we will go over the other texts of the 2 chapters of by Nagarjuna. So that's, yeah. And then, of course, if you have time and people are familiar with the Lamrim, so then, of course, Lama Tsongkhapa's great exposition, or Lamrim Chenmo, has very nice, quite a brief explanation, as well as Pabongka Rinpoche's Lamrim. So that's you can also use as a reference. Then the 2 texts we cover by Nagarjuna are also translated, and there's a commentary available by His Holiness Dalai Lama called The Middle Way. Yeah, it's a wisdom publication book, so you can, if you have it, you can read it. Otherwise, you can go over it later on. So why the 12 links? That's the question. Why did we choose to go over this subject? Because if you read in Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chenmo, then it quotes, first of all, from Buddha Sakyamuni, that from the Shalu Sprout Sutra, that the Buddha considers this as extremely important. And in many sutras also, it says, if you understand interdependence, and then particularly these 12 links, you will understand the Four Noble Truths. If you understand the Four Noble Truths, you know the truth of suffering, the origin of suffering, and how to abandon it. Yeah, so that's a particularly important quotation you can find throughout all the scriptures, as well as certain quotations they go to, if you understand or if you see the 12 links of interdependence, you see the Dharma. If you see the Dharma, you see the Buddha. Yeah, so that's countless kind of things explaining the 12 links. From its origin, and also in Vinaya scriptures, the Buddha asked Ananda and many other of his direct disciples to make drawings on the walls outside of the monastic institutions and temples. Same here in Jamyang, those who are familiar with Jamyang, as soon as you come inside, there's a big tanga with the 12 links and the wheel of life, because that helps us to understand samsara. And another important quotation Lama Tsongkhapa uses in the Lamrim Chenmo is from Geshe Chubawa, Buchungwa, Geshe Buchungwa, yeah, so Geshe Chenmo Buchungwa. So this teacher, Sublime teacher, wrote actually a very interesting text, a Lojong text on the 12 links. And then from the context of seeing the 12 links as striving for human rebirth, yeah, the first scope of the Lamrim, because understanding the nature of the suffering of the lower states of existence. And then if you understand that well, you will prevent yourself from falling into those states and make sure you get to higher states in order to develop yourself a little bit more. And not only a little bit more, all the way up to the spiritual part of enlightenment. And that's also the 12 links, traditionally speaking, is also explained in the middling scope, as you know, in order to understand the suffering of samsara and to generate a wish to get out of it. In a similar way, also the same author, Geshe Namdak, he also says that if you contemplate the suffering of sentient beings, then you can generate great compassion. Yeah, so based on the 12 links, all the 3 scopes of the Lamrim can be put into practice. So that's why I was thinking to go over that subject. But of course, we start with the basics. So the 12 links is a very in-depth kind of explanation of the Buddhist teaching. In monastic institutions, like where I was hanging out for the last 2 decades, we studied the 12 links for about, let's say, 2 to 3 months. So here we have, how many days? 6 days. So you cannot expect too much from it, but at least you get an overview, right? And yeah, so the title of the course is slightly different. Yeah, so it's kind of more general title, how we create our own reality. Yeah, so basically the reality on the more deeper level, we just went over by understanding samsara a little bit more, so that we'll explain. But also on the more day-to-day life reality, we also gonna talk about. Yeah, so yeah, I try to make it not too academic and also try to not make it too simple, because quite a few people of you already studied the Lamrim quite well. Yeah, so that's a little bit of the introduction of the subject. And yeah, as I try to make it a little bit formal, yeah, for me, I said it's my first Zoom experience. Just this morning, I woke up a little bit kind of this feeling when a film crew came to set up to make a documentary about my life, because there's not that many people. It was a film crew from the Netherlands who, you know, who walks around like this, you know, it's kind of quite a few. So this morning also when we did a few shooting, I was a bit kind of shake up, you know. So today also a little bit like that.
And Geshe, can I interrupt you, please?
Yeah.
There's a crackly sound, and I'm wondering if it's your mic at all. It's not, yeah. The sound isn't as clear as we would hope. I don't know.
Okay. Maybe it's the movement. I tried to sit still. I've been advised yesterday.
Yes.
Is that now or not?
It is still crackly, yes, but I'm not sure that we can do anything so much.
Yeah. Maybe it's the vibes. Oh.
Some people have unmuted themselves.
No, yeah.
Some people are unmuted, so that could be a feedback problem.
That's what I did. Is better already or not?
It's still crackly, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, not to worry. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The setup is not, you know, yeah, it's kind of, it works, but, you know, it's okay. Yeah, so sorry for that, for the cracking sound. Yeah. So that's basically the introduction of the subject. Then, as I said, it's good to make it a little bit formal, right? So, yeah. So also for yourself, you know, if you do retreats with body, speech, and mind. Yeah, so that means that you put yourself in a particular place. There's the retreat of the body. Then you try not to hang out and talk too much with other people in order to keep your mind focused. And that's kind of the retreat of the speech, right? That's quite easy to do for most of us. The retreat of the mind is a bit more complicated. Yeah, if you put yourself in a room and you have to think about things without getting distracted, it's a more difficult task than not to talk or not to walk around on the street. Yeah, so so thanks to the, not only thanks to the lockdown, but we basically inside at the moment, and so there's all kind of things happening in the world around us, but can also help us to reflect about the points we're going to discuss. Yeah, so we can put it into practice as well. So try to make a bit kind of serious situation for yourself. Not serious in the sense of getting too strict or tight, but serious in the sense having a relaxed mind, but let your mind stay on the Dharma. Yeah, that's the real way of being serious with the Dharma. Not to, some people when they want to be serious, they get very tight. So that's not the real retreat. Yeah, the real retreat is a very interesting threefold advice of the Kadampa Geshes, where they say, have great vision, right? So then if you have a big picture of future lifetimes, liberation, enlightenment, then these kind of little things, problems we have in life, like virus or sickness, they, in that big picture, they're just a part of a very small aspect of this particular life, right? So it's not really such a big thing to be stressed out about. So having a fast vision, just take obstacles into the path. Then the second advice is make plans, right? So we have to make plans in our spiritual path. So now I do this course and I contemplate it, try to put it into practice and move on. That's also very important. And then the third advice is what I just was referring to, is this Kunyang means relax. So also Shantideva is very skillful. If you read his chapter on effort, that there's a possibility of getting too tight. So it's important to relax. So in the retreat, I just did a retreat. Maybe my retreats are too relaxed, so then I get too lazy. But if the mind is relaxed, then it's much more beneficial to contemplate. Yeah, so that's why we have this retreat of body, speech, and mind. So try to have a little bit of a similar attitude in the coming weeks. Coming days only. Yeah. So, and to make it a little bit more formal also, I thought we do some prayers in the beginning and at the end of the sessions. So today we do a little bit more the traditional way in order, because it's the first day to start. And then maybe from tomorrow onwards, I will, abbreviate a little bit more because of the time constraints. So most of you, I think, are familiar with the prayers. So the best thing to do these prayers is, if you have, you can see it on the screen, it's perfect. So prayers are not something just to be recited. When His Holiness gives sometimes commentaries which carry certain commitments, Vajrayana practice, then His Holiness often says, in Tibetan it says katun, means, to express from the mouth, to recite, basically, to recite. So prayers, because we recite in order to do things together, but the recitation by itself is not enough. You have to, so then it's when I say, okay, the commitment is to recite this in this particular prayer, but actually not just let the words come out of the mouth, but you have to meditate. Yeah? So that means that if you recite a prayer, we have to contemplate the meaning. Yeah? So that's why I thought we do a few traditional prayers in the beginning, because the original teachings of the Buddha, the praise to Buddha Sakyamuni, and then the Heart Sutra as being one of the main, basic teachings of the Prajnaparamita. And then after that, the foundation of all the qualities, because, this presentation of the 12 links, as I just explained, falls into the threefold category of the three scopes of the Lamrim, right? Though I will explain also things related with day-to-day life, but actually the real origin comes with that. So we have to know where we are in the Lamrim. So for that point of view, we do the foundation of all the qualities. And then, short mandala and refuge. Yeah, so then, in the prayer book. Yeah, so, okay. So when you do these prayers, then basically, we first have to generate correct motivation. Yeah, so that's the beginning of every activity. especially spiritual kind of activity, very essential to make sure we have the correct motivation or correct intention. So try to think about the three scopes of the Lamrim, be thought about for those who can, in relation with the 12 links, for example. For that purpose, we here in order to achieve future precious rebirths, in order to walk towards the paths of liberation and enlightenment. Yeah, so try to make that a kind of motivation. If you're not familiar with these aspects of the spiritual part, or you don't consider yourself as a Buddhist yet, that's also perfectly fine. Then you just think about to develop yourself a little bit more and try to understand more about the mind, consciousness, and its associated mental factors, destructive emotions, constructive states of mind, as we're going to talk about as well, in order to train your mind to achieve more states of more kind of sustainable happiness, so to say, not just temporary, and to eliminate suffering. And if you understand those trainings well, then in these kind of difficult circumstances of the corona pandemic or climate issues, then we can relate it much better. We can understand it much better. And that if you apply it well to mind training, then of course there's a physical aspect that makes life difficult, being isolated or being without a job or having other difficulties in life. But our mental attitude can make a big difference. So there might be some physical difficulties involved, but if we're mentally strong, then we can prevent a lot of mental suffering, and there's no need to suffer mentally, so that we can do something about it. So try to generate either of these motivations for yourself, so either the three scopes of the Lamrim, or just to eliminate suffering in the best way you can, and try to help others to do the same. So try to motivate yourself in these lines. And then think that in front of yourself, you're not just in your room or wherever you're sitting in kind of a special place. And, it's very clean. And if you have some offerings made and for, the holy beings, then perfect. And then in front of yourself, you can try to visualize Sakyamuni Buddha, if you feel comfortable with, or if you're Buddhist. And then you're seated on top of a snow line supported throne supported by snow lions. There's a lotus, sun and moon disc. And on top of that is Sakyamuni Buddha. His right hand is on his right knee and touching the moon disc. His left is in his lap and holds a begging bowl filled with nectar. And then his whole body is made out of golden light. And he wears the robes of a fully ordained monk. And he has a very peaceful and smiling face. And those who have a teacher, you can imagine he's one with your own teacher, and he's very pleased by you being here and by you doing this practice. So visualize Sakyamuni Buddha like that in front, and then surrounding yourself all the sentient beings of the 6 realms, experiencing the different difficulties, physical difficulties, mental difficulties of the different rebirths, but you can just imagine them in human form. And then focusing upon their suffering, try to generate compassion, try to generate a wish for them to be free of suffering. And in order to eliminate their suffering, that's why you're here. And that's why you're going to do the prayers. So try to reflect in that way. And then by reflecting in that way and visualizing in that way, then we will recite the praise to Sakyamuni Buddha. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tadega, Arhats, perfect, complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and and good conduct, God and of the world, supreme God of human beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the Buddha, the Bhagavan, the glorious conqueror Sakyamuni, I prostrate and make offerings and go for refuge. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfect, complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sagata, know of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the Bhagavan, the glorious conqueror Sakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfect, complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, God, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the Buddha Bhagavan, the glorious conqueror Sakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born in this earth, you played out in 7 strides, and then said, I'm supreme in this world. To you, O wise man, I prostrate. With pure bodies, formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, flame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Savior, to you I prostrate. With the supreme science, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of merits with qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one gone to dustness, I prostrate. The purity that frees from attachment, the virtue that frees from the lower realms, the one path, sublime pure reality, the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also who show the path to liberation, the holy field, qualified to realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to use the blind community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any unwholesome actions. Engage in perfect wholesome actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a deflected view, a butter lamp, flame, an illusion, a dewdrop, a water bubble, a dream, lightning, cloud. See a constituent phenomenon like this. To these merits, may all sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the full faults, and be delivered from samsara ocean, converted by the waves, aging, sickness, and death. The next page, Heart Sutra. I prostrate to the 3 noble, rare, sublime ones. Thus I heard at one time, the Bhagavan was dwelling on a mass on Virgin Mountain in Rajgir, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound reflection. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avaligisvara looked upon the very practice of the profound reflection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also empty of inner nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avaligisvara, how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice in the activities of the profound reflection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avaligisvara said to the Venerable Shariputra, Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice activities of the profound reflection of wisdom should look upon it like this. Correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, and form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition of factor, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristics, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not defined and not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there's no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition of factors, no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visible form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. There's no I element, and so on, and up to and including no mind element and mental consciousness element. There's no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, and up to including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similar, there's no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely and dwell in the perfection of wisdom. The mind is without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times also manifestly completely awaken the unsurprised, perfect, complete, enlightened in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurprised mantra, the mantra equal to unequaled, the mantra that truly pacifies all suffering should be known as a truth since it's not false. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata, Gata Gata, Gata Paragata, Parasangata, Bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avaligisvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that one should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated, even that the gods rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Virvisvara, and those surrounding it there entirely, along with the worlds of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas were overjoyed and highly praised, spoken by the Bhagavan. Line phrase Dakini prayer. Next page. From the holy supreme realm of Gajara, you who possess power of clairvoyance and magical emanation, look after practitioners without distraction, as would you do for your own child. To the host of the kings of the three abodes, I prostrate by, Akasamara Sasana Samaryabe, Akasamara Sasana Samaryabe, Akasamara Sasana Samaryabe, Agasamara Samasam Sasanaraya Tayata Gata Gata Parakata Parasam Gata Bodhisattva. By the teachings of the noble three rare sublime ones, possessing the power of truth, may hindrances be averted, may they be eliminated, and may they be pacified. May all enemies and negative forces opposed to the Dharma, and may the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be free and from harmful conditions to the Dharma, and may all excellence be in accordance with the Dharma, and may we be auspicious and perfect happiness here and right now. The foundation of all good qualities is a kind and perfect Guru. Correctly devoting to him is the root of the path. By clean seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon with great respect. Understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once, is difficult to find again, and is greatly meaningful. Please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly day and night takes its essence. This life is impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like the shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. Finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negative actions and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Seeking samsara pleasures is the door towards suffering. They are uncertain, cannot be relied upon. Recognize these shortcomings, please bless me to generate a strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teaching is keeping the pratimoksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all modern migratory beings. Please bless me to see this and train the Supreme Bodhicitta and bear the responsibility of freeing transmigratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta, but I do not practice the three types of morality, I will not achieve enlightenment. With my clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows with great energy. Once I've pacified distraction to wrong objects and correctly analyzed the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate quickly within the mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special insight. Having become a pure vessel by training in the general path, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, the supreme Vajra vehicle. At that time, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments is keeping pure vows and samaya. As I've become firmly convinced of this, please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. Then, having realized the importance of the two stages, the essence of the Vajrayana, by practicing it with great energy, never giving up before sessions, please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. Like that, may the Gurus to show the noble paths, and may the spiritual friends who practice their long lives. Please bless me to pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances, and all my lives never be separated from perfect Gurus. May I enjoy the magnificent Dharma by completing the qualities of stages and paths. May I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. Then there's a short mandala on page number 22. Sangye Judan Zuni Tsunam Janjo Bada Dani Kyazuchi Dagi Juji Gibe Tsunam Gi Dola Penje Sangye Doma Sangye Judan Zuni Tsunam Janjo Bada Dani Kyazuchi Dagi Juji Gibe Tsunam Dola Penje Sangye Doma Sangye Judan Zuni Tsunam Janju Bada Dani Yazuji Dagi Give Tsona Dola Penche Sangye Doba. So there's a praise to the Buddha. His Holiness always recites at the beginning of the teaching. And that translates as you moved out of compassion. You eliminate wrong views. You teacher of the sublime Dharma. To Gautam Buddha, I pay homage. So that kind of quotation actually comes from the same text, Fundamental Wisdom of Nagarjuna, and well, chapter 27, if I'm right. So that summarizes very essential points. So, yeah, moved out of compassion because the Buddha taught these teachings not to become a very renowned, a very famous person, or have, you know, all kind of worldly kind of concerns or motivations. Yeah. So the Buddha taught these teachings in order to eliminate suffering, and not any type of suffering, all forms of suffering, right? Not just the temporary suffering we're experiencing, most of us experiencing because of a virus that is in this particular planet on a particular time for maybe, you know, a period of time or a few months or a year or something like that, or maybe a bit longer, but you know, so that's not the only, that's not the real suffering the Buddha focused upon. Yeah, the Buddha focused upon a more intense and more substantial form of suffering, the cause of suffering, right? And that's we're going to talk about during the course as well. So the Buddha so kindly understood not only suffering, and the suffering of the physical suffering we have, or the mental suffering we have, but the Buddha completely understood the cause of all this. You know? And having understood that completely, then he generated so much compassion for all sentient beings by understanding that all sentient beings have a capacity to develop. Yeah, we are all human beings. We have good qualities and we make mistakes. Yeah, we can develop those good qualities. We have potentials in our mind. Yeah, so we can develop good states of mind and eliminate wrong forms of consciousness and destructive emotions. Yeah, so the Buddha saw that potential in the minds of all sentient beings. And having seen that potential, the Buddha generated so much effort over a very long period of time to understand the mind. Yeah? So Buddhism is basically mind science. Yeah? It's not just a kind of any type of science or academic kind of field of knowledge. It's a kind of mind science that helps us to understand the mind more and to achieve more sustainable forms of happiness and to eliminate suffering. So that's why the Buddha actually started spiritual path. Yeah, he saw the suffering and he saw the possibility of taking it away because our mind is changeable. We have this potential to change and we have this potential to develop good qualities of mind and eliminate incorrect forms of consciousness and eliminate destructive emotions. Yeah.
Your microphone is crackling.
Cracking.
We're not able to troubleshoot. So one option is we just take a 3-minute break.
Okay.
We unplug the system.
And we plug it.
And then we use the audio.
Yeah. Is it okay for you? You have a cup of tea? Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I lived in a country for more than 2 decades where, you know, you have these things all the time. So it's okay for me, at least. Yeah. So yeah, nothing is perfect in samsara, even if you have the best types of equipment. Everything is in the nature of impermanence. So yeah, so everybody ready? So we just finished the prayers and I was explaining
the praise to the Buddha and by Nagarjuna. Yeah, so moved out of compassion, you eliminate wrong views. Yeah, so the Buddha, Nagarjuna praises the Buddha not to eliminate wrong views of others, right? He eliminated the views we all have, because destructive emotions are basically not in accordance with reality. Yeah, so because of these destructive emotions, we experience suffering. Yeah, so whatever destructive emotion comes to mind, if it's attachment, jealousy, pride, or anger, aversion, even more modern types of destructive emotion, like fear, anxiety. So those states of mind basically are not in accordance with reality, right? They're misunderstandings of reality. And that's what the Buddha actually did. He eliminated those views. Because if you eliminate those incorrect forms of consciousness and generates more constructive states of mind, then the mind improves, right? Yeah, so that's why I said in the introduction, Buddhism is kind of mind science. So that's why the Buddha, out of understanding the cause of suffering, by understanding these destructive emotions together with its cause, the Buddha said, okay, these have to be eliminated, they have to be taken away. Yeah, so that's why Nagarjuna praises that aspect. You who eliminate wrong views. Teacher of the sublime Dharma. So that means that the Buddha didn't teach only about the mind and mental factors and kind of psychology, but the Buddha went a little bit deeper. Yeah, he let us understand what is actually the cause of suffering. What are the causes? What are the conditions? How do we suffer mentally? How do we suffer physically? Yeah, so that's what the Buddha taught in the teachings on dependent origination from a conventional point of view, and how to eliminate those wrong forms of consciousness by correct understanding of reality. Yeah, so the ultimate reality of emptiness, as we're going to talk about maybe starting on Tuesday. That's the sublime Dharma. Yeah, so by understanding dependent origination, right? So you can see Buddhism is very scientific. So most of you know my background a little bit. I started as a young student in the Netherlands, studying hydrology and going to house parties all night long in the big cities, and going back home in the morning, have breakfast with your parents, in the weekend, and sleep the rest of the day. And Monday, go back to college, so university. So that was my life in the beginning. So I have a little bit of scientific background, mainly in mathematics and statistics. So that attracted me a lot in the beginning, this kind of research, mind research. Also, the Buddha said, don't accept my teachings because I'm well known or out of faith or respect for me. You should examine my teachings. Don't just swallow it. It's only this morning in live stream teaching. I was planning to sleep in, but then I woke up and then, I just watched it. So, because, for me, direct teaching is, I'm a very traditional kind of person in the Buddhist tradition. So, I only watched 2 YouTubes of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and this morning live stream of His Holiness. That's the only things I watched on, teaching I watched actually on the screen. So now I'm sitting on the other side for the first time. So, but basically, His Holiness also said this morning is kind of the tradition, the Tibetan tradition that actually originates in the Nalanda tradition of India, is a tradition based on logic. So His Holiness said, just don't chew whatever comes to you, but you have to bite and examine. So that's the kind of tradition that is based on logic, based on felt cognition, epistemology, analyzing things, don't accept, see if it's true or not. So that's what the Buddha fundamentally said in many occasions, don't accept what I say. Because, people think I'm special, or people say I'm an enlightened being. You should examine if it's true or not. And it's true, for us, same thing. Those who are familiar with the Lamrim, if you read a book, like a novel, like a spiritual book or a book about emotions, it's, oh, yeah, interesting, yeah, true, yeah, interesting, true. Then it doesn't have impact on the mind, right? It just kind of stays very intellectual. But if you analyze, you read one page, you analyze if it's true or not. You examine, take daily example out of your daily life and see if it's true. Are these destructive emotions really destructive? What does anger do? What does attachment do? Jealousy, pride, anxiety, fear? You know? So that's why there's a lot of emphasis on self-research. You study the teachings, put it into practice. So that's same true with modern times, space we're facing now with the virus, people afraid, fear, because they didn't expect this to happen. They're grasping to this kind of, permanent aspect of life will be always the same. So that's not the case, right? Because nothing can be always the same. Nothing can exist from its own side, always being the same. It's all in the nature of impermanence, right? So the virus comes, the virus abides and disintegrates, or there's a vaccination. Oxford University making incredible progress. So it has possibilities, right? So that means nothing exists forever. It's true for our temporary happiness. That's true for our temporary suffering. That's true for depression. That's true for fear. That's for anxiety. For all disturbance of mind, they come, abide, and disintegrate. So that's I think the Buddha also saw and said you have to examine it. Yeah? So that's an important aspect. So you moved out of compassion. You eliminate the wrong views. Yeah? The wrong views of the incorrect forms of consciousness. Yeah, I just said that most of our destructive emotions, right? The minds that gives us problems is not in accordance with reality. And it's not only a Buddhist view. There's many in the world, many scientific, there's a lot of scientific research being done. It's always quotes Professor Aaron Beck. He's into cognitive behavior therapy. So Aaron Beck is a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. He also came to a very interesting conclusion. He said that from a destructive emotion like anger, for example, a person generates anger to a particular individual. Yeah, so the picture that person has of that individual is getting angry at, or she's getting angry at, that picture is not the person. Very interesting comment. That's a mentally fabricated idea which we believe is reality, but it's not. And the same professor, Aaron Beck, also said that in those strong afflictions or strong destructive emotions, when they are, so to say, an emotional hijack, when you're completely overpowered by anxiety, or fear, or being angry at a person or situation, actually this professor says that 90% of what is being seen in this mental image is mentally fabricated. It's not with that person you're getting angry at. It's mentally fabricated. It's kind of 90%. So only 10% is true. So we can look at a daily example. If you have a person you dislike, or you get really agitated with, or a situation you get agitated with, this person or this situation also has positive aspects. Right? So let's say there's, let's say there's 60% qualities and 40% faults, right? From a person or particular situation or project. Yeah? But we don't like see those 60% quality and 40% faults. We like to see 70% or 90% faults and only 10 or 30% qualities. So that means we mentally fabricate an ideal reality that doesn't exist, but believe into it. We believe it. So that's true for all these kind of destructive emotions. It's not in accordance with reality, and that's why it causes us so many problems. Yeah? So, light is, I don't know, people can still meet now, they have a light problem. Yeah. So, you can see my freshly shaved head, Yeah. Yeah. Just pray for the clouds to come. Normally, I pray for the sun to come, but today on that side, clouds to come. Anyway, so yeah, so that means that these destructive emotions are not in accordance with reality, and that's why they cause problems. And that's not only a Buddhist perspective, but that's also been proven by this professor from the University of Pennsylvania. And there's not only one, there's many. And we can examine our own, in our own way, as I just explained, you know. Just check your mind, and it's true, if you get agitated with a person, and you only see the faults. And one of your friends comes by, pats you on the shoulder and says, come on, this person is not that bad, or this situation is not that bad, or the virus is not that bad, you know. So, and then you say, no, not true, because you don't like to believe that aspect of reality that actually exists, you see. So if you don't believe that positive aspect of reality that exists, and only see the negative aspect of that particular situation or person, then of course it causes a problem, you know. And it's true for anxiety and fear, same thing. You know, you think, oh, it's going to happen, but maybe it's not true. Maybe it's going to happen. You know. So when I came back from, before I came back to London, I was in Nepal, and eastern Nepal, in a place called Marathika, a place related with the Gurupim Sambhava. A few caves there, very precious place with very interesting things in the rocks to be seen. So anyway, cut the story short, so the road to that place is very basic. So it's like mountain passes, go to rivers when there's no bridge, you know. So when I was on the road, I had quite some fear, to be honest, you know, because there's nothing to stop the car from falling off, you know, 500 meters down, you know, maybe 200, but so yeah, on the way up we had the best driver, I was being told, who could drive the whole way blindfold, I've been told, but he had an accident almost, so he hit the brakes, but I was quite impressed how he was hitting the brakes, lose it, and turn the steering wheel, hit again the brakes, so but just like half a meter of the cliff, you know, so yeah, so then you can see, yeah, there's some fear sometimes, but actually it didn't happen. So then there's some mental suffering, but it's not needed. So you can just relax and, you know, enjoy the trip and hope for the best. Because if you fall off the cliff, the fear will not help anyway. You know? So you see, that's in our daily life, same thing. You know? If we want to solve a problem, but we see only the negative aspects of the problem situation, it's not going to help us. So that's kind of logic. Yeah? Another logic His Holiness puts in one of His Holiness always quotes quite often in difficult situations, is that Ashantideva said, if you have a problem and you can solve the problem, then why worry? Solve it. You know? If you have a problem but you cannot solve it, then why worry? Because you cannot solve it, you have to deal with it, right? So that means that's a very simple, basic form of advice, not that easy to put in practice, but if you can put it into practice, it's mind-boggling, right? So that proves that it's been proven that this advice works. So an example, I mean, because I have a scientific background, so in the medical school of Harvard, there's a person called Daniel Brown, and this person did research regarding post-traumatic stress disorder, and did research with Tibetans who've been imprisoned in Tibet for years or decades and being tortured and on the edge of, you know, dying. Not like a simple virus that we have, but every day there's a possibility of really dying or being tortured. You know? So you can imagine an average person, after spending a few months in a situation like that, not only has physical difficulties coming out, but also mentally, right? But the majority, I don't say all of them, but the majority of the Tibetans who come out of this very difficult period in time, period in life, and don't have even sign of post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's a sign that mind training can be put into practice and can bring great benefits. So then this scientist asks His Holiness for an explanation. And then His Holiness gives two explanations. He says, if you understand the law of cause and effect for karma, what we're going to talk about also during this course, and you see it as a part of that interactive kind of world of interdependence, we don't have control over, but we play a role in this cause and effect relationships. If you understand reality, acceptance of reality in that way, it prevents so much mental suffering. Another aspect, as only said, is those who practice bodhicitta, they can put it into practice by taking the suffering of others upon themselves. And then the mind becomes even more vast. You know, so then little problems won't arise. And that's not only a Buddhist thing, right? Also, there was in Italy, it was very difficult. Then there was the ventilators were being, I saw in the news, there was one priest, Christian priest, I think, and he was in his 70s or 80s, and they had to make a decision what to do with the ventilator because there was not enough. So he chose to give a ventilator to a younger person, and he died. So that's very similar. You know? But he saw a photo of him. He looked, his face was kind of beaming. You know, so that means this person has a form of compassion for others. It's very strong. So if you generate that kind of mind, then hardships in life or difficulties in life become peanuts. You know, so yeah, so that's kind of understanding this reality. So the acceptance is extremely important. Yeah? So another example I often use, my own mother. She knows now that I'm talking about her quite a bit. But yeah, so my mother does not really consider herself as a Buddhist, but her son is walking around like this. So there was a reason for that. So that's why she started reading things. And now she's doing a whole Rim course. Because yeah, she's in lockdown. That's a few books I left home. I said, yeah, read if you like. So that's very precious teaching. So, but before she got into Buddhism more, but she was thinking about things, right? So then my father got cancer, and it went very quick, within a few months. Lung cancer. It was a bit of a shock. So most of my aunts and uncles, they thought my mother goes in depression for months, because they had a very good relationship. Generally speaking, of course, they had problems, I know, but generally speaking, they had a very good relationship, always together. So then my father passed away, and then, of course, sadness was there. But my mother didn't go into depression, no depression. So the doctor was so amazed. And friends and family said, how's that possible? So then I asked my mother, how did you do that? So then she said, you know, I'm thinking about that impermanence for some time, and always thought this could happen, you see? So if you understand that reality, when that reality happens, there's no shock to the system. So that's why in Buddhism, we talk a lot about suffering and impermanence and death. So then people might think, oh, those Buddhists, they must be so depressed because they always talk about suffering and impermanence and death. You know? But luckily now there's more awareness because people in the West, they start to see, if you understand it, there's less suffering at the time. Yeah? So that's why in the UK and the rest of Europe, also, I think, there's kind of the death cafe developments that people talk, elderly people, they talk about dying. It's not only elderly people, because we can also die, you know, not waking up tomorrow morning, something like that. So it doesn't affect. Yeah? But at least if you understand that reality, then there's always peace of mind, because when it happens, you're ready. Mm-hmm. So that's very helpful. Yeah. So that's a few things that Buddha said, or Nagarjuna said, you will eliminate wrong views. So if you understand reality, it brings so much peace of mind. Yeah. So that's, you will eliminate wrong views. You teach to go down, Buddha, I pay homage. Yeah? So that's a kind of praise of Nagarjuna in this very profound text we're going to talk about. So, same thing, Lama Tsongkhapa. So, for this commentary, for this text by Nagarjuna, I used two commentaries, so I could read a little bit myself over the last few days. One I read by Lama Tsongkhapa, right, the founder of the Gelug tradition, who also, in a similar way, wrote a praise to the Buddha in praise of the Pen origination, after having understood the real reality, after having understood ultimate reality, and seeing that this will lead to ultimate happiness. This will lead all sentient beings beyond suffering. Seeing that aspect of reality, Lama Tsongkhapa generated so much faith in the Buddha and composed this text. Same, it's a bit longer than just the one verse I just mentioned, but about 40, I think. Yeah, so, yeah. Anyway, so then you know actually where we come from. Yeah? So the Buddha taught these teachings, and Nagarjuna, about a few hundred years after Buddha's passing, wrote different texts. Yeah? So there's a kind of collection of texts he wrote. So yeah, for this commentary I said, so on this root text by Nagarjuna, I was reading Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, which is actually translated into English, if you're interested, and well by Professor Naman Samtala from Varanasi. It's published also by Wisdom, I think, Ocean of Reasoning. Yeah, so people can read it. But also the text by His Holiness, I said, right? So His Holiness teaches, I mean, used to teach quite a bit, 3 chapters of this text by Nagarjuna, the Fundamental Wisdom, and as well chapter 18, 24, and 26. Yeah, so we're doing only 26 and 18. Yeah, so 26 deals with 12 links of interdependence. 18 deals with emptiness. Yeah, for this only few days we together, and we already 1 hour is already gone. It's like sign of impermanence goes so quick that we cannot really do chapter 24. Also, there's like 40 something verses about Four No Truths. Maybe we can do another time. Yeah, so that's a little bit the origin and the reason why we go over this text. So that means that we're going to study the text. You can listen to the audios of a text which is very, very profound, and it comes from a very authentic origin. Yeah? Nagarjuna, a few hundred years after the Buddha's passing, he wrote kind of a collection of reasonings, like 6 texts, mainly about dependent origination and emptiness. So, from the point of view of psychology, as we just saw, with destructive emotions, there's a lot of relationships with modern forms of psychology or mind science. So that's why His Holiness Dalai Lama puts a lot of efforts over the last 2-3 decades to build bridges between science and Buddhist science. Yeah, so that's why there's no books being translated. We have the Mind and Light Institute. That's very important, because also Nagarjuna, from the point of view of ultimate reality, is being praised by some of the physicists in the field of quantum mechanics. Because how Nagarjuna describes ultimate reality is very, very similar to the modern findings in quantum physics. Very interesting. That nothing exists from its own side. Nothing exists out there all by itself. Same verse. Where are you? Where? You can use your own name. Where are you? There's a body, there's a mind, but you cannot really find a concrete self that appears. Yeah, so that we find also in the external objects, things appear very concrete to us. Our problems appear very concrete to us. Our emotions appear very concrete to us. People appear very concrete to us. But actually, it doesn't exist from their side. Same the example we just used. A person getting angry at somebody, that's 90% of what is being seen is mentally fabricated. Our mind is capable of using reasoning, saying this person is bad because of this, because of this, because of this, because of this, because of this. And all the reasons are maybe not valid, but we believe they are valid, right? So that builds up this kind of mental image of the person. Inherently bad, inherently not nice. Not nice. I don't like this person. But the same person we dislike can be liked by somebody else, right? So that person called person A, we dislike. You see 90% faults, maybe 10 or less percent, a little bit kind of positive things. Somebody else looks at person A and sees maybe 80% qualities and 20% faults. But person A is not different. It's not going to change to the way the person is looking at. Person A is the same, right? So it means that our perception of that person differs from somebody else looking at the same person. Right? So it means that person doesn't exist from its own side. 90% bad, or the other person says 60-70% qualities, because that cannot exist both at the same time. Yeah, so you can see a lot of things we believe is reality, but it's not. So we are capable of eliminating those wrong views. Yeah, that's why the Buddha said. Because we have this potential in our minds to develop. Our mind is changeable. Destructive emotions are temporary. They come by a certain power of causes and conditions. They abide and disintegrate. Okay, so that means if we play with the right conditions, we can prevent them from coming up or prevent them from becoming stronger. Right? So we can play with it. That's interdependence. That's dependent origination. Right? So that means that there's one aspect why we can change the mind, the potential to change, right? So in neuroscience, like about, what is it, 10, 20 years ago, they thought if you're an adult past 20-something years, the brain doesn't change anymore, right? But now they found out that neuroplasticity, the possibility for the brain to change, even when you're later in life. Right? So if you can change the physical brain, then of course you can change the mind. So there's a lot of research being done within this Institute of Mind and Life by Richard Davidson, for example, examining meditators and what effects does meditation have on the brain, positive effects. So also I went to Pisa, Pomaya last year, Landscape Institute, and we had a conference. I met a few professors of Pisa University in the field of neuroscience. It's very interesting to see what they're looking at. What states of mind disturb? And people with mental issues, what is the cause? And how can we help that to change? Especially with neuroplasticity and the possibility to change is there. So that's one possibility for the mind to change. And I mention often in my talks also research. I mean, basically it's proof of the possibility to change people with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Jeffrey Schwartz, who was a medical doctor. So Jeffrey Schwartz, he saw that the medication didn't really work. So he went and used what we call mindfulness meditation, or a little bit more precise, what he calls the power of mental force, or the power of mental attention. So if you focus your mind on something, you can change. Right? So by listening to your brain or changing your brain, there's two different things. So that's a possibility. So in his research, very interesting to see, he teaches the people how to not listen to the thoughts that come to mind, or that are produced by neurotransmitters, or whatever explanation you give of a particular form of consciousness that comes into being by a release of neurotransmitters or any other process. It's very interesting. So he learns his patients to not listen to the thoughts, go to the garden instead of washing your hands, something like that. These days, sorry, we have to wash our hands, but if it becomes a kind of obsessive thing, then it becomes a kind of difficulty, right? So you have to count all the tins in the bar, or now we cannot go, but sometimes people have this kind of things. They have to do something, count, and they cannot prevent themselves from doing it. So there's a possibility of changing that. And so if you can change those aspects, you can change the mind, right? Because these destructive emotions, they cause problems for ourselves and become unhappy. In the Abhidharma literature, it says that destructive emotions are defined, or afflictions are defined, as that which disturbs the mind. It disturbs the mind from the point of view of losing the peace of mind. Because another potential we have is deep within the mind, underneath the surface, although destructive emotions, it's like a deep sea, right? On the surface, there's the waves moving back and forth. But deep down below, it's still. Or you have a lake in the Alps. There was somebody from Austria so in Austria, I remember when we went as young students, we were children, I should say. My parents took me to Austria in summer. Many Dutch people always went to Austria. So we went there, and then in the morning, you see this lake, peaceful. Sunshine, the clouds, the trees, the mountain reflects so much peace. Everything is being clear and being seen. Okay? So that's one aspect of the possibility of the mind. Yeah? But that same water, if you see the North Sea, the sea between the UK and the place where I'm born in the Netherlands, it can be very disturbing. If you have wind force 8, 9, I was once on a boat with my father when it was quite windy. So the waves were like the height of the temple here. So with this kind of 3 stories. So the boat went down and you only saw waves or water, a wall of water. And then you went up. You saw only water down below. So very frightening. But you can see the mind sometimes get really disturbed. That's what we call this, the emotions take over. There's no clarity. There's no possibility to think clearly. And that happens when we have this emotional hijack, right? When emotions and destructive emotions are strong, especially anger, excitement, anxiety, fear, depression sometimes, attachment, jealousy, pride, the mind loses its clarity completely. You cannot think. Right? So that's not a problem. So if you recognize a little bit more of this clarity of the mind, then you stay below the surface. Right? You don't get involved in these kind of destructive emotions. So that's true on the individual level, and that's true on the social level, and that's true on the universal level. Right? So individual level we can experience, on the social level we can see the criminals in the prisons. So where we're giving talks in the central prison of Bangalore, it has about 4,000 inmates. Very nice prison. Oh, sorry. I mean, compared to the idea I had of prisons. I had the idea of prisons having heavy armed police force, you know, doors and bars. But there, of course, there were a few doors, and they gave us a stamp. They're very Indian. They gave a stamp on our lower arm. I don't remember was it right or left. So if you get a stamp with ink, it stays for a few days. So that means you can go out again. You know? So I went into that prison. And inside the compound, there's 4,000 inmates, I didn't see one police with a gun, only with a stick. Very interesting, very interesting. So the prisoners in there, they were allowed to study, do yoga, very peaceful. I mean, they had a problem. Sometimes they closed because they had problems, but generally speaking, very peaceful. So then in that prison, there was our translator, a very nice person, just to sit with him and talk. Just a nice person. But he killed another human being. He's a murderer, right? So he told me, very interesting comment. He said, for a few minutes, I was not in control. I made a mistake. He said, mind, that's a destructive emotion that came up, no one in control, because not in me. So that's our problems in life, not only on an individual level, but also on a social level, and that's true for the whole world. Right? So we can see the more people get agitated, we can see now in the news. Politicians are fighting with each other, countries are fighting. No, you did it, no, you did it. So it's kind of, it's everywhere. But there you see there's still some kindness here and there, you know, and that's so moving. And then you can see that there's potential. Like, I'm following the news of India quite a bit because I spent half of my lifetime in that country. And in Mumbai area, in Maharashtra, you know, the virus is quite serious. I mean, still not too bad in India, but yeah, there's a lot of problems there. So this police officer, they're working so hard. And he is 10 o'clock in the evening, he was tired from the whole day. And this old lady came up to him and said, officer, all the shops are closed. And my son has his birthday tomorrow. I need a birthday cake. So this officer, so kind, he was so tired. He called his friend, who was a baker. He got a cake, delivered the next day, and the family was so happy, you see? You see how he can deal with a very difficult situation to make people happy. You know? So that means if you change the situation with positive thinking, then it's a totally different experience. So the officer could also say, yeah, no, I'm too tired, and go home, bye-bye. So yeah, that's all the things you can see. Right? So there are destructive aspects of the mind and positive. So just to come back, because I'm going out of track, we have the potential. Yeah? The Buddha said you have the potential to change because destructive emotions come up, abide, and disintegrate. Yeah? The mind can change, right? So we talked about it. And we talked about potential. Because deep inside the mind, there's no disturbance. We have the deep nature, or the most conventional, subtle aspect of the mind is clarity. So that is not stained by destructive emotion. Like if you water, you put dirt in the water, you shake it, it's all mixed up. But if you put a glass down, the dirt will sink down, right? The water will come clear. So that means that, or the sky, now luckily because of our prayers, the clouds protect the sun from coming in here. And, you know, blinding you all on the other side of the screen. So that means that temporarily, the blue sky is still there, right? But temporarily, it's kind of skewed, yeah, by the cloud. So our mind, same thing. Temporarily, there are destructive emotions, but they can be taken away because the blue sky is still there, you see? And they're not an innate part of the blue sky, you see? That's not a proof that we can eliminate destructive emotions because they're not an innate part of our mind. The innate part of the mind is actually positive. We can talk about it a little bit more later on. Another point, a few things for you to think about. Another point is why we can eliminate destructive emotions is what we discussed already quite a bit, is because they're not in accordance with reality. So we can eliminate wrong forms of consciousness, like my mother example. If you understand that and impermanence, then when it happens, sadness can be there, but the mind is not as disturbed, and there's no acceptance. Very difficult, you know. So you can see that if you understand reality, you know, you can eliminate, you know, these destructive emotions, not straight away, but in levels. So same example of I always use the example of a train in India, but also here. I had the same experience. If you sit in a train and, you know, you think you're moving, but then because of the movement on the glass of another train on the other side, so you think you're moving, but actually, when you look at the track, at the platform, it's the other train that's moving, right? But first you think you're moving. You know, you believe it, it's true. You know, then you look at the platform straight away with valid cognition, you see, oh, it's the other train that's moving because the platform is still there. Then when your friend on the other side looks at you and said, oh, you're moving, right? Then you already said, no, you don't believe it because you saw reality, you see that? So that means if you understand reality, you know, then we can eliminate these destructive emotions as well. So it's not a possibility why the Buddha said, or why Nagarjuna said, you will eliminate wrong view, you see that? So there's a very optimistic view of the possibility of change, right? So, and the possibility of change also we see in daily life, you know, it's not only in Buddhist. Because I was quite interested in prisons, because I was involved in a few projects in South India. But then I saw the news in I think Norway, Olden prison, Norway, I think it was. They treat the inmates as brothers and sisters, not as, you know, prisoners. So the guides are not the guards are not guards, but guides. Very interesting. They do things with the prisoners, you know, from, you know, social aspects. Very simple. Exercise, working together. You know, they're only locked up like during the night, basically. During the day, they're very social events. So this prison, if you look at the data, the prisoners, the inmates who come out, it's about 20% that falls back to old habits. Right? So you can see if you change your mind, there's a possibility of completely change your life, right? Of course, when the habituations are strong, also that we're going to talk about, then there's a possibility of falling back. So we're going to talk about that quite a bit in 12 things. So you can see this prison accomplished only 20%. Well, in the UK, it's about 50%. People who come out of prison fall back. Old habits. In the US, it's about 70 to 80, I believe. Because there's a lockup system. And then you don't change, right? If you just, same for us. If you just say, oh, yeah, I cannot change my mind anyway, and you just sit there, then you're not going to change, right? So if you have the possibility to change, and you take that into action, then you can change, right? Yeah. So that's a few positive things. I mean, there's many positive things, but maybe it's too long. But yeah, as an introduction to, because some people might be a little bit newer to Buddhism being present today. So then I thought it's important to know, yeah? Especially with the scientific backup. It's important to know and to understand that these teachings of the Buddha is not just kind of, you know, kind of magical kind of stuff out of India, because it's kind of incredible. In 2,500 years ago, and the period after that, Nalanda Monastic University in India was very rich. Not only Buddhism, also different forms of Hindu philosophy, Jainism. Very, very interesting ways of analyzing how we can constructively achieve more happiness. Very interesting. Yeah, so the mind is very complex, as we know. So that's why don't think that within the 6 days we have together, everything will be fine. So some people come to a course and think, oh, okay, everything is fine. But, during the course, sometimes, oh, nice, interesting, yeah, but then you go back in life and then you see the mind didn't change completely. I have the same thing. I just did a retreat for about 2 months and come out. If I sit down in my room, everything is, oh yeah, true, yeah. But then I come out and then it's a challenge. You know, though the more you do it, you can see the possibility to act in the way you trained your mind doing contemplation. So that's why we need the knowledge. That's why we're here. We need to analyze that knowledge. That's why we're going to do some meditation sessions, right? And after analyze that knowledge, we come to a conclusion, and then we focus on that conclusion. Right? So that's a very constructive way of moving your mind in a particular direction. Yeah, so that's also we're going to do in some meditations. So we have two types of meditation, so you know. One type is kind of concentration meditation, or sometimes translated as placement meditation or focused meditation, right? So you place your mind on one object and keep your mind on that object. Okay? So you need concentration. Without concentration, it's very difficult to change. Okay? It's very difficult to absorb knowledge. Like I'm talking to you on the other side of the screen, I can see you. So for me, normally when there's people sitting here, I can look around and see if people getting bored, have to crack a joke or tell a story. So for me, it's kind of you behind there somewhere. So, so I don't know how you sitting, where you're sitting. So that means that we can learn from, not only from hearing and think it's all true, but we gather the knowledge. That's why we're here. Right? But then that knowledge has to be examined. As I said, the Buddha said, don't accept my teachings out of faith, out of respect for me. Analyze it. That's exactly what the Buddha said. Analyze. So that's why we do an analytical meditation. So we do first concentration meditation, because without concentration, so now you're listening to what I'm saying. If your mind is somewhere, what you're going to do next week, or what's on the news, and then you're not really concentrating, and then you don't, what I'm talking about, it goes in and goes out there, you know, so there's not much point, right? So then you have to concentrate. So that's why we do, every day, we're going to try to do a little concentration meditation as well. Yeah. So in order to focus the mind, that's why we do concentration meditation. Then the concentration we use to analyze. That's why we do the next meditation, which is an analytical meditation. So meditation doesn't mean sit. When I was a university student, I was got into spirituality, not in Buddhism yet. So I stopped going to house parties, and I started to study Chinese medicine, because I did some martial arts. I went from hardcore taekwondo to karate, and then to kung fu, and then to tai chi, and then I went to Chinese medicine. So I was really like spiritual kind of interest the youngster has sometimes, you know. So then we were lucky. I lived in a place called Velp, it's close to Arnhem in the Netherlands. So we lived with a few students in one house. So on the bicycle it was about 10 minutes to the university and 10 minutes to the forest. I mean, forest in the Netherlands is quite relative, you know, it's kind of trees, basically, and a few hills. So sometimes I went there and then sit under a tree and meditate. You know, but I was just sitting there, but I didn't really know what to do. So I was just wasting my time, basically. Yeah, so that means we have to know how to analyze things. We have to know how to concentrate. So that's why we need those two meditations. And those two meditations are going to help us not only to change the mind, but also to understand the things we're going to study. Right? So that's why just sitting and listening, absorbing, is good. Information is good. But you have to analyze, right? Yeah, so I said before, if those who study Lamrim, if you just read a Lamrim book, you know, and just read it like a novel, oh, interesting, all true. Then you don't really follow this advice of the Buddha, and then it doesn't stay. Yeah, but if you read one page clearly, and then think about if it's true or not, and why is it true, and why is it not true? Analyze. So many things we're going to talk about in the coming days, you have to analyze. We're going to talk about past and future lifetimes. We're going to talk about the possibility to change, you know, neuroplasticity, the possibility to eliminate afflictions, how we are born in cyclic existence. Is that true or not? Analyze. That's what the Buddha said. Don't believe what I said. Analyze. So very interesting. So that's what we do in this analytic meditation. Yeah, so in the tradition we come from, I just mentioned that I was hanging out for 2 decades in this monastic university called Sergei, and we spend hours and hours in the debate courtyard, firing questions, try to get answers and not accepting the answers, and try to put in another direction and see what the person says. It goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, hours a day. You know, so it's a very intense, and very noisy place. So there was a comment Lama Zopremi said just recently. I didn't see the video, but I saw the comment. He said some people think Buddhism is just quiet, but actually it doesn't have to be quiet, because once the BBC came to our monastery university and they said, "Oh, we've never been in such a noisy place before," because in the middle of the debate, if you have like, let's say, 2,000 monks, and half of them are clapping their hands at the same time, you can imagine it's quite noisy, right? So yeah, it's a very intense way of analyzing. It's kind of analytical meditation. So if you don't analyze, then you don't improve. So that's like very important. Yeah, so that's why we have to do analytical meditation. So we do concentration meditation in order not to get distracted, and analytical meditation that actually moves the mind. Only think, oh, I don't like anger, I don't like anxiety, I don't like fear. That by itself, it's good to have that intention, but it's not going to change yourself, right? You have to analyze. Why do we have to analyze? Because this analytical approach is going to change the mind. Yeah. Same with the destructive emotions. They use the same kind of aspect of the mind, as we just talked about. I don't like this person because of this. We have all these reasons lined up, and because of those reasons, we believe it's all true, and we accept this person has 90% faults and maybe 10 or no qualities, right? Yeah. So that means that also these destructive emotions are very sneaky. You know, they use this reasoning and they believe it's all true. You know, so that means that that capacity of mind, the capacity of the mind to analyze, we should use in a more constructive way to eliminate those destructive emotions. So that's the kind of introduction of how we're going to structure the course and, you know, make it a little bit more practical, as we're going to talk about. So, over the coming days. So then what we just talked about is kind of day-to-day life approach, right? So the Buddha not only talked about this, the Buddha went a little bit deeper, went and explained the 12 links. And the first link is called ignorance. Why did the Buddha start with ignorance? You know? Because it's the root cause of the sufferings to arise. They say the afflictions or destructive emotions, anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, or in modern times anxiety and fear, for example, they directly cause disturbance of mind. Person gets an emotional hijack, harm somebody else, right? Yeah, you see there's a kind of mental attitude and a physical or verbal, you shout at a person. So it causes the other person to get disturbed and lose appetite, lose sleep, etc., etc. So that means initially there's a mental attitude which is reacted in physical or verbal behavior, right? So we're going to talk about those different types of karma, mental karma, you know, physical, verbal. So that means there's an intention, a motivation, and an act. That's why in the beginning of the talk today also we decided to generate correct motivation. So important, because everything we do, everything we say, how we physically act, like this policeman in India giving a cake, birthday cake to this family, you know, is kind of based on the quality of mind, right? You know, the other extreme of my friend in prison, based on strong anger and aversion, he killed another human being, right? So you can see, based on these mental states, either positive or negative, we act physically or verbally. You know, some people they try to cheer other people up. You know, some people try to look ugly at others and say nasty things. There's an effect, right? There's an interrelationship. So that's we're going to talk about as well. So we can see that it starts with a mental attitude. So that's why the Buddha puts so much emphasis on changing the mind. You see? Yeah. So, and then the Buddha says, the first link, ignorance. Why is ignorance so important to be understood? Because we just said that the destructive emotions, right, they directly cause, as we traditionally say, directly cause suffering, right? So you just explained, they cause mental suffering, you act physically, you cause harm to another person, you act verbally, you cause harm to another person. So this mental aspect of anger causes disturbed mind of yourself. Yeah, you lose appetite, and then you start to worry again. I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have said this. And then your whole day is just gone, just from a few minutes of acting like that. You know, the whole day is wasted. So you can see just a little bit of mental attitude can make such a big change in your whole day or weeks or life. You know? So that means the mind is so important to be understood. You know? So that's why this mental attitude. So then the Buddha said, the destructive emotions, anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, right? They are the direct cause of suffering. Mental, physical, and verbal aspects, right? Yeah. So that's the direct cause. The root cause is ignorance. Very interesting distinction. Direct cause, root cause. Because we can see, you know, if the mind gets disturbed with irritation or anger, directly causes unpleasant feeling, right? Causes suffering. Yeah, so that's the direct cause. But that's rooted in something more substantial that has to be taken care of. That's ignorance. Misunderstanding reality. Yeah, so this ignorance basically can be classified, as we want to talk about more tomorrow, from different points of view of Buddhist philosophy. Yeah, so today I thought I'd keep it extremely simple as an introduction. But first we have to know, why is this ignorance the root cause of these destructive emotions to come up? That we have to understand. So that means that before and during destructive emotion like anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, fear, whatever disturbance of mind comes, there's a very concrete concept of I and mine, right? So that we can prove, I always use an example, it's not my only example, but it's a very good example. It's kind of, if I ask, now I only have a few people sitting here on social distance, you know, so, so yeah, they're easygoing people, so I cannot really, you know, I can ask all the, whoever is there on the other side of the screen, please, everybody, come on, get angry, everybody. And then I see only smiles on the faces, you know, so it's very difficult to let people get angry in that way. But if I look at the face and say, oh, you look like this, look at where you're sitting in this room, terrible, you look like that, you act like this. Then the eye comes up, how dare you say this to me? I'm not like this. Then anger rises like that, you see? So that means that anger is rooted in a concrete concept of I am I. How dare this person say this to me? I'm not like that. No, how dare, it's not like that, it's not true. Or somebody criticizes you, very good example, you know? Then that concrete I comes up. Very good. So when somebody criticizes, normally we take revenge because we don't like the feeling, so we try to take revenge. You know, saying and world leaders do the same thing. You know? They're unhappy, you know, they take revenge, the other person takes revenge. But actually, that doesn't really solve the problem, right? Is it? It doesn't solve the problem. So that means if somebody criticizes you, actually we see down the line, that person is incredibly kind. It's amazing. Why? Because not only have you an opportunity to practice patience, but it helps you to recognize the most difficult aspects of the Buddhist teaching, and is to recognize this concept of, you know, the object of negation, or what we call, the ignorance we talk about, the view of transitory collection. Yeah? With this person being so kind, that eye comes up and you act. You know? So there's many other examples you can use, but you have to get some daily experience. How does it come up? You know? How does it appear? So that will take time. You don't get it in these 6 days. So His Holiness Dalai Lama being very modest, of course, he says, studying emptiness for the last 6 decades, and now think slowly I start to understand it. So yeah, that's the kind of encouraging one way. But another times also His Holiness, actually His Holiness in the foreword, preface of Thupten Jinpa's book on the biography of Lama Tsongkhapa, someone's actually refers, very interesting, to his experience of emptiness. Or if you read The Art of Happiness, there's one journalist who, through Geshe Namdak, he was the translator at the time, in the interview, he talks a little bit about his experience of emptiness. Very moving, very moving. So, yeah, so that means that to recognize the object of refutation, or what is ignorance is, how does it appear? That's extremely important. So that's why we're going to spend some time on that as well. Why is that so important? Because, as you can see, because of this I, complete higher mind, get angry, attachment arises, or fear arises. What I just mentioned when I was on the road from Maradika back to Kathmandu, and then the whole thing about virus I didn't know about for a few weeks because there was no internet there. I mean, there was internet, but a very weak one I didn't really use. So that means then there's a fear of what's going on in the world, and then almost falling off the cliff. And it's it was an incredible nice meditation on in the jeep going backwards. A friend of mine with me, but sometimes just sitting down and then looking at the cliff, almost falling off. And they drive fast. Luckily, the roads are not that good, otherwise they speed even more. So, yeah, it's really good experience. Because when you get close to that, it's also very strong. Very strong. If you imagine falling off a cliff or high building or in a plane and there's turbulence and you're going down, very strong high comes up. That's extremely important to recognize and experience. And in daily life, the person who criticizes you, who points out your mistakes, is basically extremely kind, can practice patience. You see your mistakes. If you don't see your mistakes, you never change, right? And then you get a recognition. So actually, instead of getting angry at a person, actually, you say, "Love so empty battery." So you should say, and then you should just sit still and just meditate in the toilet or something, away from the person. Then it's a very good experience. So yeah, that's the sequence, right? So there's ignorance, then a destructive emotion, then an act. First, there's this concrete concept of I, mine. Then a destructive emotion comes up, and then we act. Verbally, physically, or mentally. You see? And there's disturbance. So that's procedure extremely simplified today. Yeah, so I think if we do a short meditation on this, and then the questions and answers maybe we do tomorrow, right? Then, is that okay? I cannot.
It's up to you, Geshe, that we could have them, a few if there are today. It's your choice.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so let's do a meditation for about 10 minutes. And then we go a little bit over time. Is that okay or not? Yeah. Yeah, sorry. I'm a bit, I'm punctual. That's why I started on time. But I still have a little bit of Indian blood because of all the years of eating dal and rice. So that means that time-wise sometimes. Is it okay? Yeah, so let's do meditation. If everybody is okay with the meditation on the other side. People not falling asleep already. I can only see a few faces, but maybe some people already. If you all mute them, then you can hear them sleeping. So yeah, try to relax. Yeah. So what I said before, not too relaxed, but yeah, because if the mind is not relaxed, it's very difficult to meditate. So that's why. Yeah, if it's too relaxed, then you fall asleep. Yeah. If the mind is too agitated, it's like drinking too much coffee. Then also you can't really think properly, right? So that means you have to have the balance, the middle way. So yeah, so how to sit? People know how to sit? I mean, you can sit on a chair. I don't know what people sit in, but sit on the floor. You sit cross-legged, So if you, yeah, anyway, that's another story. It's going too long. So wherever you sit, the main thing is that the spine is straight, right? The head slightly bent forward. Okay? The crown of your head is in one line with your spine. Yeah? Your eyes are just about to be closed. That's not too dark and too light. If your eyes are open, you get distracted. If you completely close them, there's dullness. Yeah? So it's either distraction or dullness. There's two things to be abandoned. Yeah? So that's why we just have the eyes a little bit open, a little bit light goes in. Yeah? Your hands, you can put the right on top of the left and just put it on your lap. You don't have to sit like this. When we went to prison, then there were a few Indian youngsters, they were like, oh, meditation? Yes. I would like to do this, you know. And then, of course, then it doesn't really go, right? So you have to sit straight but relaxed. There shouldn't be too much tension, otherwise it causes distraction. So, what I said before, we're going to do two meditations. One is concentration meditation. Yeah? So that means we need an object to concentrate on, which is in this case, we use the breath. Yeah? So every in-breath, we count as 1, out-breath is 2, and then we count from 1 to 10, and then start over counting. Yeah? So then, the only thing you're doing in the coming, 2 minutes, yeah, just to briefly, it's better to have quality than quantity. Yeah? If you have quality and quantity, it's the best, but initially, it's better to have quality. Make the session short. So you're going to count the breath, and the way of breathing is without force. Just breathe in and out through your nose without forcing it, and just be aware and count it. As soon as a thought comes up from yesterday or tomorrow, so it's the past or the future, try to not to follow that thought and leave the thought aside, and just the only thing you're doing is the counting of the breath. Everything else can wait. So yeah, that's how to generate a kind of concentration. Yeah, so let's do that for about a minute or two. Yeah. So then every in-breath, count as 1, out-breath is 2, and then count from 1 to 10, and then start over counting. Yeah, so let's do that for about 2 minutes. All right, then when the mind is settled down a bit, then we do the analytical meditation, and then try to analyze if it's really true, we just talked about. Is it really true that there's a kind of concrete concept of I am I that arises when somebody criticizes you, for example, or when there's a strong affliction coming up? And if that strong affliction actually, or destructive emotion, causes disturbance of the mind or not? Is it really negative or not? How do we act verbally? How do we act physically? Yeah, the story of the prisoner, the story of the policeman organizing a birthday cake. You see what kind of effect the states of mind actually had on physical and verbal behaviors. So try to see how it's rooted in ignorance with this kind of negative state of thought, if it's true or not, and how the effects come from these kind of states of mind. Yeah? So try to take an example we talked about that you feel comfortable with, and analyze that for, let's say, about 2 or 3 minutes, if it's true or not, and why is it true or not. Yeah? So try to analyze that by using reasoning. So let's do that for about 3 minutes. So then if you analyze and try to come to a conclusion, right? So try to see it was really true. There's this kind of concrete concept of I am mind that arises, and inflation arises, that causes disturbance of minds, and that causes, disturbing others by physical or verbal behaviors, and actually causes suffering. Try to come to that conclusion, and then focus on that conclusion for about a minute. Okay, then we can stop. So yeah, that's basically if you structure a meditation like that. We did it very briefly, but it gives you at least a structure. So you can do every day. Concentration meditation, analytical meditation. You analyze, come to a conclusion, then you focus on that conclusion. That is kind of also combined analytical and concentration meditation. So that's gonna basically make the change. Because if you habituate yourself to something, and then you come to a conclusion, and you believe the conclusion is true by correct reasoning, then next time it becomes easier to generate that same thought process. Because you believe the same. If you look at a platform, you don't believe anymore you're moving, right, in the train. So in a similar way, in this meditation technique, we use it to move forward, right? So yeah, so we do it every day a little bit, so you get a little bit experience of that. Yeah, so yeah, so that's a little bit short introduction, a bit longer than I initially expected. I thought I'd start a little bit more with ignorance, but if there's people who are quite new, then they get this in the beginning. And if you're quite new, then there's also a video uploaded of a talk I gave in Delhi. It's called 12 Links, Delhi, right? Tushita, Delhi. It's kind of one of the shortest summaries I ever did. I think 1 hour or something, 1.5 hours about the 12 links. So if you're quite new, then if you look at that video, it might be quite helpful to do that today. If you're already quite familiar with these aspects, then you can skip that if you want to, or if you have time, you can do. But then you can listen to the audio recordings, because the audio goes a little bit more into detail about the 12 links in relation with the drawings. And then tomorrow we're going to dive into the actual presentation of the text of the 12 links according to Nagarjuna's text. Yeah. So then, with questions, Wendy, how?
Yes. If you have a question, you're welcome today to write it in chat. And from tomorrow onwards, you will receive an email with a Google form where you could put your questions. But if somebody has a quick question now and wants to just raise their hand, whilst other people might be writing their question in chat. So anybody got specific, maybe a practical question in particular? Julie, I'll just unmute you. Thank you. Your question, please.
Oh, thank you. Hello, Geshe. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. That's a quick question. Is it important to count the in-breath, or is it okay to count the out-breath?
Ale. Yeah. It's whatever. It's basically, it's designed to develop concentration, right? And you need an object for concentration. So it's either the in-breath or out-breath or both. It's not really a big deal. It's not. If you get uptight about what to choose, then it becomes instruction, right? So you can choose.
Okay.
But it's traditionally been explained as in-breath, out, in-breath 1, out-breath 2, etc., etc., because it gives you more focus, because we breathe in before we breathe out, right? So that means it's easier for the mind to stay focused because there's little time in between the two. Yeah. Does it help?
Yeah. So yeah, because I've been counting just the out breath.
You can, but if you count both, you keep your mind more tight, not tight in the sense of uptight, but you keep your mind more to an object, right? Because if you only count your out breath, then when you breathe in, there's a possibility of distraction. So if you count your in breath as well as your out breath, you keep counting, you keep more focused, right?
Ah, so I had misunderstood. So I've been counting just the out breath to 10, but you're saying to count in breath 1, out breath 2, or in breath.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that fixed, right? If it's too difficult for you, you can play around with whatever. You have to see what's beneficial for your mind and see if you don't get distracted and if you move forward. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Susan, do you want to ask your question? How long should the breath exhale?
How long should the inhale and exhale be ideally? Should you be trying to lengthen it, or should there be, because it's affecting the nervous system, so how long is your inhale and exhale? And also, are you engaging the locks, the internal locks?
So the breathing process should be natural. If your in-breath is, wait for a while, then it becomes a distraction, right? So why is the breath being taken as an object? Because our emotions also relate with the breathing pattern, you know. So if you're tight and you breathe in and out, it helps to relax, right? The goal of meditation is not relaxation, but you need a certain state of mind to be relaxed. It's true, no? Sometimes we get uptight and then, relax, stay down, breathe in, breathe out, and it becomes easier, right? So that means that's why the breath is being taken for us beginners. Yeah, we can take other objects. There's more advanced meditations where you take very subtle objects of concentration. But for a beginner, it's true. It helps to put down the mind to relax. So that's why the breathing process is being taken. And then the breathing process should be natural. Don't force it. Don't make the in-breath longer or the out-breath longer. Try to keep it balanced. Maybe one of the days we do the 9-round breathing exercise, which helps you to balance the in and out breath. Yeah. So
could you teach some pranayama, please?
Sorry?
Could you please teach some pranayama breathing?
Yeah, I will do.
And talk a little bit about the internal locks as well, the engaging the bandhas.
Yeah, I don't go into too much detail because it's a very secret instruction of Naropa, but the general things can be taught in this way.
Thank you. Jill and I have a similar question. Jill, do you want to ask your question? How should we structure our day?
Hello, Geshe. How should we structure our days during this retreat? What is your guidance on sort of
how to structure daily retreat?
I've not done one before.
Huh?
As I've not done one before, please.
Hi, Leon. How to structure a retreat? Yeah. So first of all, you have to know the time frame. If it's a weekend or a week or a month. So that's first of all you have to know. Then what you're going to meditate upon. It can be very secular, universal, as we just talked about now, or it can be, as we're going to talk about from tomorrow onwards, more structured in the Lamrim, right? So, sorry, if you do a structured Lamrim retreat, let's say you take about a week or half a day a day for a week, something like that, or a whole week, full day, right? As example. Then how you structure, you do prayers, as we did in the beginning, where you feel comfortable with, you feel inspired by. Yeah, so it can be a Buddhist prayer, it can be a Christian prayer, it can be anything. It's not, there's a kind of universal aspect, right? So if it's a Buddhist prayer, then you can do things that you find moving, that helps you to feel inspired. Yeah, so then there's a possibility we're going to do one of the days as well, is to receive nectar lights, to purify and get the right conditions to meditate. So don't worry, we're going to explain how to do it. And then you structure those meditations throughout the day, right? So you have either 4 or 6 sessions or 8 sessions. So it's very important to make a structure. When I do retreat, then with Fabienne, who lives next to me, she knows it's like the clock properly because we're at time like this, breakfast this time, and exercise this time is kind of a clock. So that helps my mind to keep focused, right? So if you keep your sessions and be disciplined, it becomes easier. Same in monastic institution. If you just follow discipline without arguing and it becomes very easy. So that means you have to discipline, right? So whatever time you have, you divide your day over sessions, you formally sit, you do the same thing as we did with prayers, you do concentration meditation, you do analytical meditation, right? So the analytical meditation you structure, right? We did now just kind of ID, But if you do a Lamrim retreat, or you do a retreat on the 12 links, as we will do this time, then you take one aspect a day, or one aspect of 2 sessions, or one, for example, the 12 links, right? We're going to talk about the 12 links. So 1 session or 2 sessions in the first day, you meditate on ignorance. What is ignorance? How does it appear? Right? Then the next 2 sessions of the day, you go to the next link. What is karma? What is action? How does physical and verbal behaviors come about? The analyzing. Then the 3rd session, etc. You structure. You just write it down for yourself, an outline. So you can do the whole Lamrim or part of the Lamrim. Yeah, so after these kind of 6 days we have together, you probably get a little bit idea how to structure it. Yeah? So if you be by yourself, it's very important to discipline yourself. Make a schedule. Time frame. I wake up this time. I'm very late always because I go to bed too late. Don't follow my example. You go to bed early and you go wake up early. Yeah? In a monastic institution, that's my habit. I'm still in the same kind of cycle. You don't go to bed early. You don't go to wake up too early. You know. So yeah. Last night, same thing. I was walking yesterday, got late, and then I was home his teachings, live streams. So I just sleep in, and then I woke up anyway. So, yeah. So yeah, they don't do that. You know, just make a structure, right? Clear. You know? Time frame, sessions, the subjects in each session, and you go to a particular subject throughout the week or throughout the weekend. Yeah.
Anything
helpful or not too much?
Yes, that's good. But anything we shouldn't do? Like, are we going to be mostly silent, avoiding conversation, avoiding television, etc., etc.?
Don't go to the bar or something.
Not leaving the house.
What
So
you shouldn't do is try to avoid distraction, right? So in the breaks, don't, like now also for me, same thing. In retreat, I have to call my mother because she's alone at home. She's in lockdown. I have a youngster I have to take care of in the monastery. He's in lockdown. So normally I'm very strict with the retreat, no internet. And, you know, I put everything aside, like in Maratika, for example. But then last retreat was like 2 months. I think I have to call my mother now and come on. And so, you know, call her or write her email. But try to discipline, you know? Especially social media, forget it. Mobile phones, switch off. You know, you have to, because our mind is so easily distracted. And if you watch something and you sit and you try to analyze, then your meditation is meditating on the news and not on the subject, right? So then the mind gets distracted. And so you have to, that's why I said in the beginning, we have the retreat of the body, meaning don't go out, you know, in town, you know, just stay in your room, right? Then we have the verbal retreat. Don't talk too much. When I'm in retreat here, incredible conditions here in Jamia, thanks to the team here. So I don't have to talk with people. I just stay in my room, have the food, you know, and don't talk. So then for a month or 2, I just don't talk. So only get my mother on the phone. But yeah, if you take that away also, then, because if you stop physical and verbal activity, it's easier to get into, you know, what you're studying or what you're meditating upon. But you have to be careful. Yeah? If you cannot do it, if you get too tight by being alone, being silent, then it's better just to go out to the garden or, you know, go for a walk or talk with somebody. You have to be very skillful, you know. So that means that the mind should be relaxed but focused. So that's a very important aspect. So you have to balance. In the beginning, when I did my first retreat, I was also too strict. So that was what's called doom. And the retreat was not very successful, I tell you. So then after the retreat, I totally changed. And now I'm too relaxed and I'm getting too lazy. But at least, it's, you know, the mind is, when you think about things, it's easier. Yeah? So that means that, yeah, you have to have a balance. You know, what you cannot. Some people go in silence and then they have to see people, but they cannot talk. Then you can see the mind gets tight, you know. So when I be in silence, because I can do that. When I'm in a monastery, in our house group, I have to go to the kitchen on the other side of the building and I have to see people, and I'm just like that, then it disturbs more than the benefit of the silence, right? So then I'm easier. Yeah? So you see you have to see the boundaries where you are as well. Yeah?
thank you.
Okay.
Di, did you want to add anything about that question?
It's not me, there's someone else called Diane.
Oh, a different Diane, sorry. And I think that, any more questions? No, okay, I think for now, we will leave the questions until tomorrow.
Sure.
So thank you everybody who contributed, and thank you Geshe for answering the questions so clearly.
Sure.
Yes, so time for prayers.
Yeah, is okay? People have time?
Yeah.
I can't hear the people, because if you have people here in the hall, they say yes or no, but everybody is muted, so I don't know.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, yeah. Yeah, so if you open the prayer booklet, or can open, so we do the final Lamrim dedication prayer, and then we do a few others after. Page number 35.
Thank you.
It's called the final Lamrim prayer. So we did a Lamrim prayer in the beginning, and we do one in the end. As, yeah, throughout the coming days, we can see and place it within the Lamrim. Yeah? Yeah. So then think that dedication basically is a prayer, but not just a prayer, is a prayer that dedicates the merits or the good deeds we've done. So we say we have an intention, we do something positive, and then we dedicate in a particular direction. So it means dedication means to direct the mind, the positive aspects, in a way up in our spiritual development, either human rebirth, liberation or enlightenment, or the things we just talked about today, changing the mind. That helps. So yeah, prayers. I did some reading about the benefits of prayers. There's very interesting research being done with Christian nuns praying for mothers in Korea who didn't know they were prayed for, and it was a control group, a very scientific project. And the data shows that there's a significance in people who were prayed for and were not prayed for. Very interesting. And that's just, it's for us good to know, that's, the capacity of the mind goes beyond the limitations of the body. Right? So, yes, for us, a spiritual practitioner, very important to pray to go in a different direction. And then you can see that helps to build courage. If you have a problem now, as we just saw, if you have a problem, you can solve it, you solve it, not to worry. If you have a problem, but you cannot solve it because it's not within your capacity to do anything, if you make a strong prayer, it becomes very strong. So, not now possible, in the future may I be able to do this. You have a positive attitude, it helps. Yeah. So there's many benefits of doing prayers and dedications. Yeah, no time to talk about more. So try to think about the meaning when you read the words. Yeah. For my two collections of two types of merits, past the space that I've amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time. May I become a chief leading Buddha for all those whose mind is the mind by my ignorance. Even if I do not reach the states, may I be held in love and compassion for my life. May I find the best of complete creative parts of the teachings, and may I please the Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings. With the points of the paths abiding between them, may I behold the Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and peace. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted boundless peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time. By even this graduated path to enlightenment completely due to the victorious conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all humans and non-human beings who eliminate diversity and create conditions for practicing the action paths never be parted in any of their lives from the pure path prayed by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may notion of prosperity spread everywhere. So then we make it short here on. So then think that whatever collection of positive things we've done today to develop and to help others to develop, we try to dedicate that all sentient beings without exception generate positive states of mind, like loving kindness, compassion. So try to dedicate in that direction. And also that oneself, all sentient beings, understand reality, and by understanding this reality, eliminates ignorance and destructive emotions, as we just talked about, because they not encounter reality. By understanding reality, the reality of emptiness, we're going to talk about, may it be generated in the mind of all sentient beings without exception, may it never decrease but increase. Tony Tower Rinpoche, Maje Panangi, Yavanyamba Neva, Yangone. Also try to dedicate for the spreading of these kind of teachings in all directions, in oneself and all sentient beings, in every part from these kind of special teachings. Also try to dedicate for the teachers. Teach these kind of teachings, like Soins Dharma, Lama Soper Miche, and all the true teachings, teachings path to enlightenment, and they have long and healthy lives, and their holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And then, yeah, oneself, all sentient beings in its future lifetimes may be parted from these precious teachers and quickly progress from the stage of path to enlightenment and the state of Vajradhara that we achieved. Okay, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. For those who are I'm French. Vielen Dank. Anyway. So thank you very much, and then see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. I think everybody's in the same place.
Thank you so much, Geshe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.